I lost everything in that fire, my love, my life. But just when everything felt like crumbling down, I was saved by visions of a brighter future. The first thing I noticed was the smell, sharp, thick, and bitter. It filled my nose and throat, jolting me awake like a slap to the face. For a second, I was disoriented, my brain fuzzy from sleep. Then I saw it, the orange glow creeping in through the window. And I heard it, the blaring screech of a fire alarm. I shot up, my heart pounding. Alec! I called out, glancing around. The couch I'd been sleeping on was empty. I rubbed my eyes, trying to shake off the fog, but the smell of smoke only got stronger. Alec, where are you? My voice cracked as panic started to set in. He wasn't here. He'd stormed off earlier, upset about some stupid argument. He'd said he needed space, and I'd let him go. But now? Now the apartment was filling with smoke, and he was somewhere inside. I scrambled to my feet, my chest tightening with every breath. The hallway was already hazy. The walls, the ceiling, they felt alive, like the fire was chewing through them inch by inch. I coughed, my voice shaky as I called his name again. Alec! No answer. I ran toward his bedroom door. The handle was hot when I grabbed it, and I yanked my hand back with a hiss. My stomach dropped. No, 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 I muttered, slamming my shoulder into the door. Alec, open up! Still nothing. I don't even know where the strength came from, but I threw myself at the door again, and this time it burst open. And there he was. He was slumped on the floor near the bed, his body limp like a rag doll. The flames were everywhere, on the walls, the furniture, even the ceiling. It was like stepping into a nightmare. Alec, I shouted, rushing toward him. My chest felt like it was being crushed, but I didn't care. I crouched down and grabbed his arms, shaking him. He groaned softly, but his eyes didn't open. I didn't have time to think. Wrapping my arms around him, I started dragging him toward the door. He was heavy, dead weight, but I wasn't about to give up. My legs were screaming, my lungs were on fire, and my skin felt like it was about to melt, but I kept pulling. We're almost there, I muttered, more to myself than him. Just a little further. The building groaned above us, a sound so loud it made my stomach twist. I glanced up and saw it, the ceiling, cracking and sagging. No, 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 I whispered. Then it happened. The ceiling gave way with a deafening crash, and I barely had time to react. I threw myself over Alec, shielding him with my body. Pain, hot, sharp, blinding pain, shot through me as debris slammed into my legs. I screamed, but the roar of the fire swallowed the sound. For a second, everything went still. The heat, the weight, the agony, it all blurred together. But in that moment, one thought burned brighter than the fire around me. He's safe, he's okay, and then everything went dark. I woke up to a world of white. White walls, white sheets, white lights overhead that buzzed softly, like they were mocking me for being alive. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. My head felt heavy, and my body, it felt wrong. I tried to move, but it was like my lower half didn't get the message. That's when the door creaked open. Mia? Alec's voice. At first, relief hit me like a wave. He was here. He was okay. I turned my head toward him, and there he was, standing in the doorway, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His hair was messy, his shirt wrinkled, but his face was what stopped me cold. He wasn't smiling, he wasn't crying, he wasn't even looking me in the eye. Hey? I croaked, my throat dry and scratchy. Hey, he said back, his voice so soft it barely made it across the room. Something wasn't right. Before I could ask, a doctor walked in, clipboard in hand, and an expression so serious it made my stomach flip. She didn't waste time, didn't soften the blow. Mia, I'm sorry, but we had to amputate your legs. The injuries from the fire were severe. We had no other choice. For a second, I thought she was talking to someone else. My legs were gone? I looked down, expecting to see them there. Just like always, but the sheets at the end of the bed were flat, empty. No, I whispered, shaking my head. No, no, no. I looked at Alec, hoping, praying that he'd say something. That he'd grab my hand and tell me it was going to be okay. That he'd hold me and make me believe it. But he just stood there, quiet, awkward, like he didn't know what to do with himself. I tried to get to you sooner, he mumbled, his hands shoved into his pockets. I, I'm so sorry, Mia. This is all my fault. I stared at him, waiting for more, waiting for him to rush to my side, to tell me he'd be here for me no matter what. But he didn't move. You're here now, I said, my voice trembling. He nodded, but it was like he didn't hear me. He kept staring at the floor, like it had all the answers he couldn't give me. I'll I'll come back tomorrow, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. Tomorrow? I echoed, my chest tightened, the panic bubbling up. Alec, wait, but he was already walking toward the door. I just need some time, Mia. I'll be back, okay? And just like that, he was gone. I stared at the empty doorway, my mind spinning. I'd given everything for him, my legs, my life, my future, and now he couldn't even stay in the room. Tears blurred my vision as I sank back against the pillows, my body trembling. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Love was supposed to conquer all, right? That's what they always said. Love was supposed to mean something. But this wasn't a fairy tale. This was reality. Cold, brutal, and unforgiving. And for the first time, I wondered if I'd been a fool to believe in love at all. 2 months later, Alec nowhere to be found since that day at the hospital. The news came like a punch to the gut. I was scrolling through my phone, something I'd avoided since the accident, when I saw it. A photo of Alec and Isabel. They were at some fancy restaurant, smiling for the camera. Her hand rested on his, a diamond ring glinting on her finger. The caption read, "Congratulations to Alec and Isabel on their engagement." Engagement? I stared at the screen, my chest tightening like I couldn't get a proper breath. My hand shook as I scrolled down, my heart sinking with every congratulatory comment. People were gushing about how perfect they were together, how meant to be it was. It didn't make sense. He'd just been here. He'd looked me in the eye, told me he'd be back, told me he needed time. And now he was proposing to Isabel. I wanted to scream, cry, throw my phone against the wall, but I couldn't move. I just sat there, frozen, the weight of it pressing down on me. I gave everything for him, everything. My legs, my future, my heart. And for what? To be tossed aside like some broken doll while he played happily ever after with her. My hands clenched into fists, the anger bubbling up until it was too much. I needed answers. The next day, I called Alec and told him to meet me. My voice was steady, but my heart was anything but. He agreed, reluctantly, like he knew exactly what was coming. When I saw him walking into the coffee shop, I had to force myself to stay seated. He looked good. Too good for someone who'd wrecked my life. His eyes met mine, and I could see the guilt in them before he even sat down. Mia, he started, but I held up a hand. Don't, I said, my voice sharp. Just tell me the truth. Isabel, engaged? Were you ever going to tell me, or was I supposed to find out like that? He rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding my eyes. I was going to tell you. I didn't know how. How? I repeated, my voice rising. How about this? Hey, Mia, thanks for risking your life and losing your legs to save me. By the way, I'm marrying my ex. Was that too hard to say? His face crumpled. Mia, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen this way. Didn't mean for it to happen? Alec, I gave everything for you and you... My voice cracked, but I pushed through it. You just walked away. I didn't want to hurt you, he said, his voice soft, full of guilt. But Isabel and I, we never really let go of each other. The words hit like a slap. I stared at him, my chest tightening so much I thought I might stop breathing. You were a hero, Mia, he continued, his voice trembling. But I can't be the man you need anymore. Hero. That's all I was to him. A memory, a sacrifice. Not someone he loved. Not someone he could build a life with. I felt the tears sting my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I just nodded, pushing back my chair and grabbing my bag. You're right, Alec. You can't be the man I need. But don't you dare act like you're the victim here. And with that, I rolled my wheelchair out, leaving him sitting there with his guilt. Let him carry it. I'd carried enough for the both of us. I couldn't stay. Everywhere I went, I felt their shadows, like they were etched into the walls of the city. Alec and Isabel, their perfect little fairy tale, Their engagement splashed across social media and whispered about in the places we used to go together. I couldn't breathe here anymore. It wasn't just about them, it was about me. Every corner I turned, every familiar street, reminded me of the girl I used to be, the one who believed in happy endings, the one who thought love could conquer anything. I'd built my life around Alec, trusted that he'd be my rock. And what did it get me? A hospital bed and an empty promise. I sat by the window in my tiny apartment, staring at the city lights. For the first time, they didn't feel comforting. They felt cold, distant, like they were mocking me for staying here, clinging to a life that wasn't mine anymore. I can't do this, I whispered to myself, my voice barely audible over the sound of my own heartbeat. I wasn't just running away from Alec and Isabel, I was running away from the version of me that thought love could fix everything. That girl didn't exist anymore, and maybe that was the hardest part to accept. Losing Alec was one thing, but losing her, the girl who had been so full of hope, so sure of what the future held, hurt more than I thought it would. But I couldn't grieve her forever. If I stayed, I'd be trapped in the ashes of what I used to be. I didn't know where I'd go, but I knew one thing. I needed to start over. Somewhere far away. Somewhere I could figure out who I was without him. The bus dropped me off in a town so small I couldn't even find it on a map. It didn't matter. That was the point. The less people, the less questions. I didn't want to explain my past to anyone. I didn't want anyone to look at me the way people always did now, with pity. The town was quiet, cheap, and rundown. The kind of place where no one cared who you were or why you were here. My apartment was tiny, with peeling wallpaper and a bed that squeaked every time I shifted. But it was mine, for now. The days blurred together. I tried to find something, anything, to keep myself busy. I applied for remote jobs, spent hours reading, even started learning how to get around with my prosthetics. But every step felt like dragging 1,000 pounds, not just because of my legs, but because of everything else I carried. I'd lost so much more than my legs in that fire. I'd lost myself. Nights were the hardest. I'd lie awake, staring at the cracks in the ceiling, replaying it all in my head. Alec, Isabel, the fire, the hospital, the look on his face when he said he couldn't be what I needed. I felt like I was drowning in it, and there was no way out. And then, it happened. One night, I fell asleep early, too drained to do anything else. My dreams were sharp and vivid, sharper than they'd ever been. I was standing in a convenience store. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as a man in a black hoodie walked in. He had a gun. He shouted at the cashier, demanding the money from the register. I could see every detail. The guys shaking hands, the way the cashier stammered, the color of the bags on the counter. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart racing. It felt so real. The next day, I flipped on the TV while eating breakfast, more out of habit than anything else. The local news was on, and the headline made my stomach drop. Convenience store robbery caught on camera. I stared at the screen, my spoon frozen midair. It was the same store I'd seen in my dream, the same cashier, the same black hoodie. The details matched down to the tiniest thing, like the stack of potato chip bags near the counter. At first, I thought it was just some weird coincidence, a fluke, but then it happened again, and again. Each time the dreams were clearer, more precise. A broken water main flooding a street, a car accident at a specific intersection, a woman spilling coffee on a stranger at a diner. I wasn't imagining it. I was seeing things before they happened. It was terrifying, but for the first time in months, I didn't feel lost. I didn't feel empty. I didn't know what this was or why it was happening to me. All I knew was that something inside me had changed. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as broken as I thought. At first, I tried to ignore it. I told myself the dreams were just that, dreams. Random, coincidental, but it was hard to believe that when the same scenarios kept showing up on the news the next day, like reruns of something I'd already lived through. It started small, a burst water pipe flooding a convenience store, a dog getting loose and causing a traffic jam, a kid winning a spelling bee in a town I'd never even heard of. Harmless little things that didn't matter much in the grand scheme of life. But then the visions started to grow. One night, I dreamed of a man winning big at a casino, down to the number on the roulette wheel he hit, red 21. The next morning, I couldn't stop thinking about it. What if it wasn't just a coincidence? What if I could do something with it? I didn't have much left in my savings, but I took a deep breath and booked a bus to the nearest casino. As I stood at the roulette table, I felt ridiculous. My palms were sweaty, my heart racing, but I stuck to the dream. Red 21, I said, placing my last 20 bucks on the table. The ball spun, the wheel blurred, and then just like in my dream, it landed on red 21. My 20 bucks turned into 700. I walked out of that casino in a daze, clutching the cash like it might vanish if I let go. It wasn't just luck, it was real. After that, I started paying attention to the dreams. I kept a notebook by my bed, scribbling down every detail the moment I woke up. When I dreamed about a horse winning a race, I bet. When I dreamed about a sports game, I'd put my money in. It wasn't overnight success, but little by little, I started to see results. Small wins turned into big ones. I could feel myself rebuilding, not just my bank account, but my confidence, my life. For the first time since the fire, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt powerful. And then it hit me. The fire hadn't just destroyed me. It had changed me. It had ripped apart everything I thought I knew about myself, but in its place, it had left something else. Something strange, something unexplainable, but something mine. I wasn't the same Mia who had once believed love could fix everything. That girl was gone. But this version of me, she was sharp, resourceful, and determined to take control of her life. I didn't know why I'd been given this gift, or curse, depending on how you looked at it. But for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel lost. I had a purpose. The world had taken so much from me. Now it was my turn to take something back. The city was nothing like the quiet little town I'd left behind. It buzzed with energy, people rushing everywhere like they had somewhere important to be. At first, I felt like an outsider, overwhelmed by the noise and the pace. But it didn't take long for me to realize something. This was a place where people reinvented themselves. If there was anywhere I could rebuild, it was here. I rented a tiny apartment, a shoebox, really, on the edge of the city. The paint was peeling, the pipes rattled when I turned on the water, and the rent was way too high for what it was. But I didn't care. It was my starting point. I spent my first weeks figuring out how to use my visions intentionally. Up until now, they'd felt random, like flashes of someone else's life that I just happened to see. But I wondered, what if I could guide them? What if I could focus on the things I wanted to know? It started with the stock market. I would go to bed thinking about it, imagining tickers and headlines, and sure enough, I'd wake up with flashes of tomorrow's news in my mind. A company announcing record profits, a merger that would make waves. At first, I didn't trust myself. I played it safe, investing small amounts, testing the waters. But every single time, I was right. Soon my savings doubled, then tripled. I reinvested every penny, and as my confidence grew, so did my ambition. I started watching real estate trends, trying to time my visions to the market. I dreamed of neighborhoods before they were hot, rundown properties that would sell for millions after just a few renovations. I bought my first property with the money I'd earned from stocks, a crumbling old duplex that no one else wanted. I flipped it in 6 months and made enough to buy 2 more. It wasn't long before I was managing a portfolio of investments that made me unrecognizable from the girl who'd stepped off that bus. And it wasn't just the money, it was the control. For the first time in years, I felt like I was steering my own life instead of being dragged along by it. I wasn't the helpless girl who'd been left behind. I wasn't defined by what I'd lost. People started to notice me too. My name began to carry weight in business circles, and I found myself at networking events surrounded by people who saw me as an equal or even a competitor. I wasn't sure I belonged, but I played the part, confident and composed, even when I was shaking inside. And every time I closed a deal or saw my bank account climb higher, I felt the same thing. I was proving something. Not just to Alec, not just to Isabel or anyone else who doubted me, but to myself. I had been broken, burned, and discarded. But now, I was rising, piece by piece, stronger than I ever thought I could be. It didn't happen overnight. There wasn't a single moment where I woke up and felt like a new person. But little by little, piece by piece, I started to rebuild. The broken, vulnerable girl I used to be faded into the background, and someone new, a version of me I didn't know existed, began to take her place. The first big step was the prosthetics. When I'd first gotten the standard ones, I hated them. They felt clunky, awkward, like they belonged to someone else. But as my business ventures grew, so did my resources. One day I found myself at a state of the art prosthetics clinic, staring at designs that looked straight out of a sci fi movie. Top of the line, the specialist told me, fully integrated, designed for mobility, comfort, and even running. It was a big investment, but when I took my first steps in those new prosthetics, it was worth every penny. For the first time since the fire, I felt whole. No more awkward limping, no more feeling like I was dragging myself through life. With these legs, I could walk seamlessly. I could even run. That was the moment I started to see myself differently. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. I started working with a personal trainer, focusing on rebuilding my strength and stamina. Every day I felt a little stronger, a little closer to the woman I wanted to be. But it wasn't just about the physical changes. I reinvented everything: my style, my voice, the way I carried myself. I traded in my old wardrobe for sleek, tailored pieces that made me feel powerful. I cut my hair, started wearing makeup that highlighted the sharpness in my features. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the girl who'd cried herself to sleep over Alec. I saw someone new, someone untouchable. And still, there were nights when my mind wandered back to him and Isabel. I wasn't obsessed with them anymore, not the way I had been, but they lingered in the corners of my thoughts like a shadow. It wasn't just Alec's betrayal that haunted me. It was the way he'd made me feel. Small, disposable, like my love and sacrifices didn't matter. And Isabel? She wasn't just the woman he chose. She was a reminder of everything I wasn't at the time. Perfect, whole, unscarred. But I wasn't broken anymore. I didn't just want revenge on them. That felt too small, too shallow. What I wanted was justice, not just for what they'd done to me, but for the girl I used to be. The girl who believed in them, who gave everything for them, only to be left with nothing. I didn't just want to prove them wrong. I wanted to prove to myself that the fire didn't destroy me. It forged me. And when I finally faced them again, I wouldn't come as the girl they left behind. I'd come as the woman who rose from the ashes, stronger than ever. 5 years, that's how long it had been since I walked away from the life that shattered me. 5 years of rebuilding, rising, and reshaping myself into someone unrecognizable. Now, it was time to return to the place where it all began, the town that tried to bury me. When I stepped off the plane, everything felt smaller. The streets I once wandered aimlessly, the cafes where I used to waste hours, even the skyline, it all seemed like a faded photograph of a life I'd left behind. But this time, I wasn't the same Mia who'd boarded a bus with nothing but pain and a suitcase. I was someone else now. The first thing I did was buy a house. Not just any house, a mansion on the outskirts of town. It was the kind of place that made people talk, the kind of place that turned heads. Modern, sleek, and perched on a hill overlooking the city, it screamed wealth and power. I wasn't shy about making my presence known either. I made calls, reached out to the right people, attended the right events. My name began to circulate through the local social circles. Mia Reed, the mysterious, successful entrepreneur who'd come back to town out of nowhere. I knew it wouldn't take long for Alec and Isabel to hear about me. This town loved its gossip, and people like them thrived on staying in the loop. I could already picture Isabel's face when she found out. I went to my first event a week after settling in, a charity gala held at the city's fanciest hotel. As I stepped out of my car, wearing a black gown that clung perfectly to my frame and heels that clicked with confidence, I could feel eyes turning toward me. Inside, it was all chandeliers and champagne flutes, laughter and shallow conversation. I scanned the room, and sure enough, there they were, Alec and Isabel. They stood near the bar, smiling and chatting like they didn't have a care in the world. For a moment, I felt a flicker of something deep in my chest. Not pain exactly, but a sharp pang of recognition. Alex still had that easy charm, that boyish grin that once made my heart race. Isabel was as polished as ever, her blonde hair shining like she'd stepped out of a magazine, but I wasn't that girl anymore, the one who would have melted under Alex's smile or shrunk in Isabel's shadow. I was someone they wouldn't even recognize. I didn't approach them that night, not yet. Instead, I mingled, introduced myself to the right people, and watched as the whispers began to ripple through the crowd. Who is she? Did you see her house? It's worth millions. She's gorgeous. I heard she owns a whole string of businesses. By the end of the night, I'd made my mark. I left the gala with a smile on my face, knowing the wheels were already in motion. Alec and Isabel had no idea what was coming, but they would soon. It didn't take long for the gossip to reach me. In a town like this, rumors spread faster than wildfire, and I had enough ears in the right places to know everything worth knowing. Alec's company, the one he'd poured everything into after leaving me behind, was on the verge of collapse. A string of bad decisions, mismanaged investments, and rumors of internal corruption had left it hanging by a thread. And Isabel, the queen of perfection? Turns out, her crown wasn't as secure as everyone thought. Whispers about her spending habits, her icy demeanor, and the tension between her and Alec were starting to slip through the cracks. It was poetic, really. The life they'd built together was crumbling, piece by piece, just like the ceiling that had crushed my legs all those years ago. When I heard they'd be attending the annual charity gala, I knew it was time. I didn't just want to see the cracks in their armor, I wanted to see their faces when they realized who I'd become. The gala was at the same hotel as before, the one with glittering chandeliers and champagne that probably cost more than most people's rent. As I stepped out of my car, heads turned. My dress was sleek and floor-length, shimmering under the lights, and my makeup was sharp enough to cut. I wasn't just dressed to impress, I was dressed to intimidate. I made my way inside, letting the buzz of conversation wash over me. The crowd parted for me like I was royalty, and I soaked in the whispers. They didn't know who I was yet. Not really. But they would, and then I saw them. Alec and Isabel stood near the edge of the ballroom, their smiles stiff and their eyes shadowed with exhaustion. Alec looked older than I remembered, his shoulders heavy with the weight of his failures. Isabel's smile was brittle, like glass ready to shatter. I walked toward them, my heels clicking against the polished floor. People turned to watch, the room growing quieter as I moved closer. Alec glanced up first, his eyes landing on me and freezing. His expression shifted from confusion to shock to something I couldn't quite place. "Mia?" he said, his voice barely audible. Isabel turned, her mouth parting slightly as her gaze swept over me. She blinked, like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. "Surprised?" I asked, a small smile tugging at my lips. I tilted my head, letting the moment stretch out. "You didn't expect me to rise from the ashes, did you?" Alec's face paled. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. Isabel, always quick to recover, straightened her shoulders and plastered on that fake, sugary smile. "Mia," she said, her voice dripping with false warmth. "It's been a long time." "Not long enough," I replied, my smile never wavering. And just like that, the first move was made. They thought they'd burned me. They had no idea I'd turn those ashes into something stronger. And tonight, they were going to feel it. I always knew Isabel's perfection was an illusion. No one is that flawless, that polished, without hiding something beneath the surface. What I didn't know was just how deep her cracks ran. It started with a gut feeling, but as I dug deeper, it became clear. Isabel's entire life was built on lies. And now, it was time to expose her. The first step was gathering information. With the wealth I'd accumulated, it wasn't hard to find people who were willing to talk for the right price. I started with the usual routes: former employees, mutual acquaintances, even a few friends she'd dropped along the way. It didn't take long to confirm what I suspected. Isabel wasn't just manipulative, she was dangerous. What shocked me was how much dirt I found. Isabel had been embezzling money from Alec's company for years, funneling it into secret accounts under the guise of expenses. Lavish vacations, designer clothes, even a penthouse in another city. It was all paid for with company funds. And Alec? He had no idea. But that wasn't the worst of it. The more I dug, the more I uncovered, until I hit the jackpot. Isabel was having an affair, not just with anyone, but with Alec's business partner, Greg, the man Alec trusted most. The betrayal was so blatant it made my stomach churn. Texts, photos, secret rendezvous. It was all there, sitting in my inbox like a gift wrapped in deceit. I stared at the evidence on my laptop, my fingers hovering over the trackpad. Part of me wanted to laugh at how cliché it all was. The perfect wife, the loyal business partner, both stabbing Alec in the back while he scrambled to save the company. But the other part of me felt something deeper: vindication. They had taken everything from me: my legs, my life, my love. And now, I had the power to destroy them. The next step was planning. I wasn't reckless enough to confront Isabel directly. Not yet. If I wanted this to work, I needed to play it smart. So I packaged the evidence carefully, making sure to remove any trace that could lead back to me. Photos of the financial records, screenshots of the texts between Isabel and Greg, even footage of them meeting at a hotel. I had it all. Then, I sent it anonymously to a few key players: a journalist at the local paper, a whistleblower hotline within Alec's company, and a few well-connected socialites who lived for scandal. I didn't just want this to hurt Isabel, I wanted it to ripple through their entire world. The fallout was immediate. By the next morning, the headlines were everywhere. CEO's wife linked to embezzlement scandal. Social media lit up with speculation, and the whispers at every corner of town grew louder. Isabel's carefully curated image began to crumble, and Alec's company, already on shaky ground, was thrown into chaos. Alec didn't take long to address the situation publicly. He called a press conference, standing stiffly at a podium with dark circles under his eyes. He spoke about transparency, about investigating the claims, about holding everyone accountable, including himself. But the cracks were visible. He looked tired, defeated. I watched it all unfold from the comfort of my living room, sipping coffee as the drama played out on live television. Isabel was nowhere to be seen, of course. She was likely hiding, trying to figure out how to spin this in her favor. But no amount of spin could fix what I had unleashed. The next time I saw Alec in person, it was at another event, a charity auction this time. He looked worse than the last time I'd seen him. His suit was still pressed, his hair still neatly combed, but there was a heaviness to him, like the weight of the world was pressing on his shoulders. When our eyes met, he hesitated, then made his way over to me. "Mia," he said, his voice low, almost cautious. "Can we talk?" I raised an eyebrow, pretending to be surprised. "Of course, what's on your mind?" He glanced around, as if checking to make sure no one was listening, then leaned in slightly. I don't know how much you've heard, but things haven't been great lately. The company, Isabel, it's all falling apart." I tilted my head, feigning sympathy. "I'm sorry to hear that. I've seen some of the headlines. It must be hard." "It is," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "And I can't shake the feeling that someone is targeting me. The timing, the leaks, it feels deliberate." His words sent a thrill through me, but I kept my expression neutral. "That sounds awful. Do you have any idea who it could be?" "No," he said, shaking his head. "But whoever it is, they've done their homework." I nodded, biting back a smile. "Well, Alec, I hope you figure it out. It's a shame to see you going through all this." He gave me a faint, tired smile. "Thanks, Mia. I appreciate that." As he walked away, I watched him disappear into the crowd. He had no idea that the person he suspected, the one who had orchestrated everything, was standing right in front of him. This wasn't just about revenge anymore, it was about justice. Justice for the girl who had been burned and discarded. Justice for the life I'd lost because of their selfishness. And I wasn't done yet, not even close. The text from Alec came late one night, just as I was wrapping up some paperwork for a real estate deal. Seeing his name light up my phone was like a spark of electricity, one I couldn't ignore, no matter how much I wanted to. "Mia, can we talk? Please? I need to see you." I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. A part of me wanted to delete it, ignore him, make him feel as invisible as he once made me. But curiosity won. I replied, keeping it simple. "Sure, when and where?" He suggested a small cafe on the outskirts of town, far enough from the city center to avoid prying eyes. The next day, I arrived early, sitting near the back with a latte I barely touched. The air was thick with anticipation, a mix of satisfaction and something I didn't want to admit: nerves. When Alec walked in, I barely recognized him. His hair was disheveled, His shoulders slumped, and there were lines on his face I didn't remember being there. He looked like a man who had lost everything. "Mia," he said as he sat down across from me, his voice soft and weary. "Thank you for meeting me." I gave him a polite smile. "Of course, you sounded desperate." He winced at my words but didn't deny them. "I am," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "I don't even know where to start." "How about the beginning?" I said, folding my hands on the table. He took a deep breath, his eyes meeting mine for the first time. "Everything's falling apart, Mia. The company's on the verge of collapse. Isabel—" His voice cracked, and he looked down, ashamed. "She's been cheating on me, with Greg." I pretended to be shocked. "Your business partner?" "Alec, I don't know what to say." "She's been siphoning money from the company for years, and Greg was helping her cover it up. I trusted both of them, and they—" He broke off, shaking his head. "They betrayed me?" I leaned back, feigning concern. "That's awful. I can't imagine what you're going through." He looked at me then, his eyes full of something raw. "Mia, I'm sorry. For everything. For the way I treated you. For leaving you behind. I was an idiot. I thought I was doing the right thing by letting you go, but I wasn't. I was selfish. I made a mistake." His words hit harder than I expected. For years, I'd imagined him saying these things, admitting he was wrong, begging for my forgiveness. And now that it was happening, it felt hollow. Still, I tilted my head, playing the part of the sympathetic listener. "Alec, that's a lot to process. But why come to me? What do you want from me?" He hesitated, rubbing his hands together nervously. "You're the only person I feel like I can trust right now. You've always been strong, smarter than I ever gave you credit for. I don't know what to do, Mia. I need help." Hearing those words should have been satisfying. I should have felt vindicated, powerful. And in a way, I did. Watching Alex squirm, seeing the regret in his eyes, it felt like justice. But beneath the satisfaction, there was something else, a pang of the old love I tried so hard to bury. This was the Alec I'd fallen for, the vulnerable, honest version of him, stripped of his ego and charm. For a moment, I remembered what it was like to love him, to believe in him. And it hurt. As he sat there pouring out his heart, I felt the tiniest crack in my armor. Did I really want to see him lose everything? Did I want to destroy him completely, or was I just trying to prove a point? "Mia?" he said softly, pulling me out of my thoughts. I forced a smile. "I'll think about how I can help, Alec, but you have to understand this is complicated for me." "I get it," he said quickly. "I do, but even if you can't help, I just needed to tell you. I'm sorry." That night, I couldn't sleep. Alec's words replayed in my mind, and for the first time in years, I wasn't sure what to do. My resolve for revenge felt shaky. When I finally drifted off, the vision came like a freight train. I saw Alex standing in the middle of a crowded courtroom, his face pale and drawn. Reporters shouted questions as police led him away in handcuffs. The headlines screamed corruption, fraud, and arrest. I could see the ripple effect, the company completely imploding. Alex's reputation ruined beyond repair. The vision shifted, and I saw Isabel walking away unscathed, her smug smile intact. She had pinned everything on Alec, leaving him to shoulder the blame for her crimes. I shot up in bed, my heart racing. This wasn't just a warning, it was a choice. I could let it happen. I could sit back and watch Alec's world crumble while Isabel walked free. It would be poetic justice, wouldn't it? He left me behind, abandoned me, when I needed him most. Maybe he deserved this. But then I thought of the girl I used to be, the one who believed in fairy tales and happy endings. She wouldn't have wanted this. Not really. And no matter how much I tried to deny it, part of me still cared about Alec. The question was, did I care enough to save him? I sat in the dark, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. Revenge was easy, justice was harder. And forgiveness, that was the hardest of all. But one thing was clear. Whatever I chose to do next, It would change everything. It was time to end this. I'd spent years climbing back from the ashes of my old life, building something stronger, sharper, untouchable. Now, it was time to use everything I'd gained to take back what was stolen from me. Not just my legs, not just my dignity, but the justice I owed to the girl I used to be. The plan was simple: expose Isabel and Greg for the frauds they were, and in the process, save Alex's company. Not for him, but for me. He didn't deserve to lose everything because of their betrayal, but that didn't mean he'd walk away unscathed. It started with a press release. Using the evidence I'd gathered over months of digging, I anonymously sent a bombshell report to every major media outlet. The story laid it all bare: Isabel and Greg's embezzlement, the money siphoned out of Alex's company into private accounts, their shady deals disguised as legitimate business expenses. The story hit like a wrecking ball. Within hours, it was everywhere, on the news, social media, and every business blog worth reading. Isabel and Greg were finished. The leaked bank statements, the incriminating texts, the photos of them together at a luxury resort Alec never even knew about. It was undeniable. The fallout was immediate. Isabel was forced to step down from her charity board. Her perfect wife persona shattered beyond repair. Greg resigned in disgrace, his career ruined. And Alec? For once, the media was on his side. Headlines painted him as the victim of their schemes, a man trying to hold his company together while being sabotaged by the people closest to him. But the damage to the company was already done. The debts, the bad investments, it all left Alec teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. That's where I came in. I made the call to Alec's CFO myself, offering to buy out the company's debts in exchange for a controlling share. It was a business move, plain and simple. At least that's what I told myself. Within days, the papers were signed and Alec's company was mine. When the deal was finalized, I sat alone in my office, staring at the stack of contracts. I should have felt triumphant. I'd saved the company, cleared Alec's name, and destroyed Isabel and Greg in the process. But instead, I just felt tired. I knew Alec would come to me eventually. He always did when he needed something. And sure enough, a few days later, I found him waiting for me in the lobby of my building, looking lost and out of place among the sleek, modern decor. "Mia," he said as I approached, his voice soft, almost pleading. "Alec," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" He looked down, his hands clenching at his sides. I wanted to thank you for everything. You didn't have to do what you did for the company, for me. But you did. And I tilted my head, watching him struggle to find the words. It was strange, seeing him like this, vulnerable, humbled. It almost made me feel sorry for him. Almost. "And?" I prompted, crossing my arms. He took a deep breath, his eyes meeting mine. "I made a mistake, Mia. With Isabel. With everything. I was wrong to let you go. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I wasn't. I hurt you, and I'll never forgive myself for that." I felt a pang in my chest, the ghost of the love I'd once felt for him. But it wasn't enough. Not anymore. "Alec," I said, my voice steady, "I saved you once, and it destroyed me. I chose to do that again against my better judgment, but we're never getting back together." His face fell, the weight of my words hitting him like a blow. "Mia, No," I interrupted. "You don't get to rewrite the past. You don't get to pretend that what you did didn't happen. I've moved on. You should too." He looked at me for a long moment, his shoulders sagging. "I don't know how to move on," he admitted. I sighed, softening just slightly. "You'll figure it out. You're a survivor, Alec. You'll make it through this, just like I did." He nodded, defeated, and for the first time, I felt like we were finally on equal footing. He wasn't the man I once loved, and I wasn't the girl he abandoned. We were just two people with too much history between us. As he turned to leave, I felt a strange sense of closure. Not triumph, not satisfaction, just closure. That night, I sat on the balcony of my mansion, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. The air was cool, the hum of traffic faint in the background. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. I hadn't just rebuilt my life, I'd taken control of it. I wasn't the girl who sacrificed everything for love. I wasn't the victim of Alex's betrayal or Isabel's schemes. I was Mia Reed, stronger, smarter, and more powerful than I ever thought I could be. And for the first time, I wasn't thinking about revenge or justice or the past. I was thinking about the future, my future, because while they had burned me, I had risen from the ashes, and this time I wasn't looking back.